On this episode of China Uncensored, is China still communist? Hi, welcome to China Uncensored. I'm your host, Chris Chappell. China, as you know, is run by the Chinese Communist Party, or CCP. It has been since Mao Zedong's revolution nearly 70 years ago. And nothing illustrates the success of communism in China like the complete destruction of all things capitalist. In 1949, Mao Zedong and the CCP seized all the means of production, taking over all the farmland and turning all private companies into state-owned enterprises, creating a communist paradise where everyone was equal. Equally miserable, sure, but equal. But China has undergone huge changes since the days of collective farming and ration coupons. All of that silly equality is long gone, and everyone is happy. Except the vast majority of people who still earn less than $10 a day. But with the rise of China's wealthy elite, is China really even communist anymore? It's easy to look at the skyscrapers in Shanghai and Guangzhou and say, no, China's capitalist now. In most ways, it's just like Western countries. Well, yes, China no longer has a collectivist economy. Nowadays, some people are brutally poor, and some people are crazy rich. And some people are crazy and rich. The Communist Party hopes we in the West see China's bright, shiny cities and luxury hotels and forget that China is still controlled by the Communist Party. Pay no attention to the red dragon behind the curtain. Karl Marx, who's the founder of modern communist thought, wrote a lot about the economics of communism. His idea was that no individuals should be allowed to own the means of production, like factories or farmland. Everything should be owned collectively by the masses, i.e. the Communist Party. That's why when Mao Zedong took over, he made sure no one in China owned a company or farm anymore. I mean, if they did, the CCP would just kill them and take it. So most businessmen and landlords were like, here you go. It's called equality by mandatory consent. But now, after 4 decades of economic reform, 97% of Chinese companies are privately owned. So in the sense of private ownership, China isn't really communist anymore. I bet Chairman Mao is rolling over in his glass case. Let me just take a moment to point out how weird it is that they've kept a dead guy in a display case in the middle of Tiananmen Square for 40 years. Anyway, the CCP wants you to see all the private ownership and think China has reformed. But there are other aspects of communism that the CCP would like you to please forget. In particular, how communism isn't just about how the economy works. It's about having a one-party system that controls just about every aspect of society. And that part has stuck around. For example, the CCP controls workers through the All-China Federation of Trade Unions. Its goal is actually to make sure workers don't collectively bargain. The CCP also controls all citizens groups and associations. For example, China's feminist organization, the All China Women's Federation, is actually an organ of the CCP. It's used to make sure that women follow the National Population Control Plan, such as by getting married younger and having the correct number of children. Very feminist. The CCP also controls the churches. Want to be Christian in China? Well, you do have a choice. You can either belong to the state-run Chinese Patriotic Catholic Association or the state-run Protestant Three Self-Patriotic Church. Doesn't that sound fun? You can believe in Jesus if you want, but you'd best remember who's really in charge. The CCP also controls the entire education system, making sure that children learn to hate the Japanese imperialists and love the Chinese Communist Party. As one Shanghai history textbook official said, history is still used as a political tool, and at the high school level, we still must follow the doctrine. The Great Famine that killed 40 million people? Let's just call it the Great Oopsie Daisy. I'm just kidding. It's actually called the Great Leap Forward. Seriously. The CCP also monitors every one of its nearly 1.4 billion citizens through a massive surveillance system, which is called Skynet. Yes, they actually call it Skynet. It's like they watched Terminator, but somehow got the opposite takeaway than everyone else. China's Skynet combines mobile phone GPS tracking, text message collection, and 170 million security cameras to make sure everyone is harmonious and no one does anything illegal. Like criticize the CCP's invasive surveillance system. China also controls the media. There's obviously the state-run media like China's Central Television. China also allows privately owned media, but what they can and can't say isn't exactly free market. It's determined by CCP censors through an organization called SAP. It's even harder to say in Chinese. But at least you can own a private company in China. That's not communism, right? Right. Except it's not a free market economy like we have in the West either. Because while anyone can start a business, not everyone can succeed. For example, if a company's president makes friends with the right communist officials, red tape and roadblocks will magically disappear. If he doesn't, he can be stopped by arbitrary regulations and his competitors will quickly outcompete him. That's why all the big companies have strong ties to the CCP. Plus, the CCP requires all companies with more than 50 employees have to have a Communist Party secretary on staff. That person's job is to monitor the company and make sure it's ideologically pure. And by pure, I mean the right kind of corrupt. Even foreign companies operating in China have to have a party secretary. Just to make sure that free Happy Meal toy doesn't come with any free speech. The CCP also controls China's currency. For decades, they've kept prices in China artificially low so that Chinese exports are cheaper than everyone else's. And that's also meant that foreign goods are artificially expensive in China. So it's hard for foreign companies to compete. That's not a free market either. And while 97% of companies are privately owned, the CCP still controls most of the biggest industries, like oil, banking, rail, and telecom. Foreign companies wanting to do business in China can't just set up shop. They're required to have a Chinese-owned joint venture partner. That partner gets to share the profits and all their valuable intellectual property. That is not something that normal countries require, because it's ridiculously unfair. In fact, besides moving toward a market economy, China has made very few major political reforms since the days of Mao Zedong. Even though the current leader is called a president, he's not elected. The Communist Party is above the law and controls China's government and society through the same kind of authoritarianism the Communist Party has always held so dear. The CCP also controls the court systems, so there's no rule of law. Unless you think China's 99.9% conviction rate means it has really, really talented policemen. There's no freedom of speech either, which is why you can't watch this YouTube video in China. Except for you, buddy. You think I don't know about your illegal VPN? Just kidding, okay? I don't know about your illegal VPN. But the Chinese Communist Party does. So while China today barely resembles the communist state of the 1950s and 60s in terms of economic structure and the number of McDonald's, it still retains almost all the other aspects of communism, like state control, censorship, mass surveillance, and surveillance of mass. So next time someone asks you if China is communist, you can tell them with confidence, yes-ish. Sort of, mostly. It's complicated. Did you like this episode? Be sure to click the subscribe button. We publish 3 or 4 episodes a week on YouTube. And please, use that share button to share this episode with every single one of your friends. Do it now. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. See you next time. China Uncensored is a bit controversial. When you criticize the CCP, a lot of advertisers get scared. That's why China Uncensored is funded mainly through contributions from viewers like you. Click here to see how you can contribute. Seriously, we rely on your support. So, click here.